Huge benefits to your mental health can be had from doing something creative. Hi, and welcome to episode 3 of Missing in Art with me, mART. In this episode, we were going to be looking at the feathers of the lorikeet. We looked at the beak in week 1 and in week 2 the eye, but I have a confession to make. I messed up. I basically overworked the base layer, and originally I thought I could maybe skirt around it and still use it. It wasn't completely beyond salvaging. But then I saw Kirk's comment and I felt bad. I couldn't in good faith show you this is the way to do feathers. It's not. So I've done an emergency parrot, which I will show you later, and that is the correct way. With feathers, you don't want to do much blending, and I did too much of that. And I knew I was on the wrong path. I think Amy knew it too. She didn't say anything, but she's got a terrible poker face. So I persisted, thinking that I could save it, but eventually it was driving me crazy, and I just gave up and thought, never mind, mistakes happen. It's par for the course. So I thought, actually, this might be quite encouraging for you to know that someone with even my experience, 30 odd years of drawing, is still making mistakes. So let's turn this into a positive. I've actually already started thinking about a children's book idea based on this very lorikeet. If I ever get around to writing that book, always much easier to come up with the ideas than it is implementing them. So before going on to feathers, I thought I'd provide a little bit of context for the name of this vlog, Missing in Art. Missing in Art is basically where I go when I want to heal. Over my lifetime, I've benefited hugely from engaging in creativity and drawing. It's only really recently that I've truly appreciated the benefits. Previously, I just did it and I felt good and I didn't necessarily make the connection, but in recent years I've been thinking about it a lot more. I'm quite an introverted person as well, which means I need to spend a lot of time on my own to recharge. But I'm also someone who is prone to panicking and getting anxious. And the very act of drawing calms me down. Huge benefits to your mental health can be had from doing something creative. And even when it's not going right, you'll always find a positive from it. And the thing about being an artist is, more often than not, you're on your own. You're a lone wolf. That expression, birds of a feather, when it applies to artists, doth not flock together. We tend to just be on our own, thinking inside our heads quite a lot, which can be a dangerous place to be. It can be quite unhealthy if you spend too much time outside of reality. So not having that support can be quite difficult, which is partly why last year I set up this artist group, the Wild Oceans 11. You can check us out on Instagram. Just type in #WildOceans11 and you can see some of our work on there. What's been so lovely is having this group as like a support group. We share each other's projects and encourage each other along, and it's really quite lovely. They're all artists and go through a lot of the same struggles. We beat ourselves up when things aren't going right. We feel like we have the weight of the world on our shoulders, but it's always good to just get a bit of perspective and realize that more often than not, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to encourage you to make mistakes, and if you do, share them with me. I've just shared my mistake with you, so open up. We don't always have to be perfect. It's an impossible thing to achieve. Now, one of the artists in this group is Tom Shepherd, and he has now got a series going, a podcast series, about creativity. He gets on lots of guests, all artists from different fields, and what's been really interesting listening to these podcasts is the commonalities that exist between artists that perhaps we, because we're such lone wolves, haven't been aware of up until now. Loved listening to these podcasts, and I wanted to recommend 3 in particular. So the first one is his episode on mental health. Tom, in this episode, opens up about his own struggles with mental health. And I've also contributed something to this episode, as has Alicia, the dog painter, on Instagram. Check her out. She writes really eloquently and passionately about the topic of mental health. She's had her own struggles in the past, which she opens up about as well. And just a thoroughly inspiring person. Now, the second episode I wanted to recommend, and this is a really useful episode if you're someone who is looking at how to make a living from your art, and that is the episode with Maria Brophy. She's an art consultant, just a fountain of knowledge, and yeah, I had to stop the episode halfway through just because there was so much good information coming my way. I couldn't process it all. So check out that one too. And the third episode is the one I listened to most recently, and that is the episode with Helen Victoria, another incredibly inspiring person who was a dancer for many years, had to stop that for a reason that she talks about in the podcast. She also talks about the topic of coercive control. From experiences she had on a previous unhealthy relationship, and where that has taken her into trying to inspire others and help others identify the signs of unhealthy relationships. She is just one of these people that is a joy to listen to. She's so funny and really knowledgeable, insightful. So that would be my third recommendation. I'll put them all at the bottom. And enjoy. I find them really, really useful. So now you've got lots of good listening to be getting on with. I've got this weird, this nice light shining on my forehead, accentuating my receding hairline. Let's just move over here. I will now show you how you are supposed to do feathers the correct way. So firstly, let's get those other features sketched out. It's a useful guide for differentiating between the different textures of the beak, eye and feathers as you go along. So here I'm just identifying where the feathers around the cheek join up with the head, and we'll use that as a jumping off point. The feathers are like overlapping fans. It's very much like building a puzzle. Using the last piece you put down to instruct where the next piece is going to go. Now, because you're also having to essentially create the puzzle pieces, making sure that they're all roughly the correct size is tricky. So something I quite like to do is to work in sections and essentially weave those sections together. Just makes it a bit easier to get the proportions right. So the error I made before was basically overworking the base layer. I broke my own rule and applied too much pressure early on. Naughty. With feathers, you really don't want the pastel pigment to get into every groove of the page, and so therefore you do less blending. I'm trying to keep the shape of the feathers in mind at all times, so training my hand to keep creating those curves. The feathers get progressively larger as you move away from the head. Around the head, the small, fluffy, downy feathers are exposed. And as you move away, the larger feathers come in and the barbs start to become more apparent. So render those barbs, but you don't have to draw each and every individual barb. You can just hint at them. So here you can see I'm starting to bring those sections together. I'm also accentuating the dark areas where the feathers overlap, which just helps to bring them out. Always make sure you jump between the features so as to keep them all in line. This is maybe where I went wrong the last time, was I just spent too much time on individual features. It's just better if you do it all together, because then you can see the difference in textures more clearly. So that would be my tip for birds, is don't see it like, now I have to draw the feathers. Do them alongside the other features. And I think that will just make it easier for it to come together. But there you go. Hopefully that was useful. Who knows what we'll do next week, but I'll look forward to seeing you then.